Welcome back to my channel, it's Robin. Today's video is a story time on what I liked and what I disliked about being cabin crew for Easyjet. So backstory, I worked as cabin crew for Easyjet in 2014, so about 8 years ago, and I only did it for one season and I stopped doing it because, not because I just chose to leave, I stopped doing it because I got arrested. So that was the reason I actually left. In terms of the actual job, what I liked and disliked about it were the training was about a 3 or 4 week course, and it was literally like a really intense 4 week course. You had to do multiple choice exams, you had to do a swimming test, you had to go into like a simulation plane that was on fire and put the fire out. So the training, some elements were really fun, some elements like the exams and some of those sessions were quite intense, and I remember leaving like a couple of the days and just having the biggest headache ever, because you're literally just so focused on trying to pass these exams. So yeah, the training was about a 4 week course. I quite enjoyed it, but I did find it very, very intense. Not everyone passes the initial training, and so if you don't, you'll have to go back and join another group that start after you. I was lucky enough to pass it first time. There was about 25 of us on the group. I think maybe 2 or 3 people, maybe even up to 5 people that started with us didn't finish with us. Some of them left for whatever reason, and some of the people just didn't pass the exams, and so they were put on the course after us. When we graduated, you have like a graduation ceremony, which was really cute, and then you have like, I think you have 2 check flights, and the first check flight, as far as I'm aware, you're given different roles, so each cabin crew member is either 1, 2, 3 or 4. This is from memory, so it may not be that accurate. And I think 2 was one of the easiest roles, if I'm not mistaken. So every member of the crew is given a number, and that's your role for that day. So a number 2 may be responsible for looking after aisles or rows 8 to 16. They're your rows. In those rows, if anything goes wrong, it's down to that person. So I think on your check flight, you are number 2, because that's the easiest role, and you're responsible for those set rows. When you're turning the flight around, it's your responsibility to clean those rows and check that nothing's been left, like no packages or anything has been left on those rows. And the cabin manager or an extra manager comes on that flight just to check and see how you're working and how you're operating. Once you've had your 2 check flights with the manager overseeing what you're doing, you're then free to fly. You'll be put on a roster, and your flights will be like, hang on, let me see. Hang on. So you have like this little book, and it has like all your announcements. So A390 and A320 onboard PAs. So one of the PAs in the book is, "Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome on board our Easyjet service, shortly departing for Malaga." And so you could use your book and you could read all of your PAs at the back of the aircraft. And there's loads of different ones. So before the doors close, you'd say, "We'll be shortly closing the aircraft doors, so please complete any final calls or messages before we request the activate flight safe mode." Obviously now I'm sure you can keep your phones on, but this was like 2014. After takeoff, this is something that I think the number 2 used to always have to do, and it was, "Ladies and gentlemen, the seatbelt signs are still on, so please remain seated with your seatbelt fastened until they have been switched off. We suggest that whenever you're seated, you keep your seatbelt fastened. Toilets are located at each end of the cabin. Remember that smoking is not permitted at any time." So those are the type of announcements you'd have to do. trying to see what else is in here. Okay, so on an A320, the cabin crew member 2 would be responsible for the row 23 going back to the last row and the rear galley. Cabin crew 3 would be responsible for 15 to 20, so that's rows 15 to 20 and the rear toilet. Cabin crew 4 would be responsible for rows 8 to 14, the forward toilets and the forward galley. Cabin crew 1, I'm sure, was the cabin manager actually. Oh, so here was my check flight. So it says new entrant check flight. This was on an A319. It was from Luton to Budapest and back to Luton. The flight number was 2077 2078. And obviously I passed. And what I was actually looking for, this was like my schedule. And this was from the 27th of July 2014 until the 26th of August 2014. On a Sunday, for example, my flight was, my call time where I had to be at the airport was 5:55. The flight would take off at 6:54 and it was Luton to Faro, and the arrival time was 9:34, and then the return flight was 10:09. Faro to Luton, and we'd arrive at Luton at I think 12:50, and then you'd have like a 30-minute debrief. So you finish your shift at, you land back at 12:50, but your shift would finish at 1:20. And it tells you at the bottom all the names of all the people that you'd fly with or who would be on your flight. So yeah, that was my schedule. And there was also like an app where you could log in, and if you couldn't do a flight, you could try to swap your flight with somebody else. And it's only if they accepted the flight that you would swap, and it'd be officially swapped. If not, you basically had to turn up. In terms of the job itself, I really enjoyed it. The downside is that it's something that's good for somebody that's quite young and hasn't really got any responsibilities or family or anything like that, because sometimes you would be flying at such random times that if you wanted to go out on a Friday night, you could have a flight at 5 in the morning and you couldn't really change it, you just had to go on the flight. And yeah, sometimes you'd be, say you've made plans for a Friday night again and you said you're going to be going out with your friends, your flight could be expected to land back in Luton at, let's say, 9 p.m. But if there's any hold-ups on the way, or you couldn't get an air traffic control landing slot, it could mean that you could be delayed by 1-2 hours. I remember one flight I was delayed by about 4 hours. So that was the only downside. You couldn't really have much commitments outside of the job, because even when you're working, you don't know when you're going to finish realistically. And sometimes if you made plans, you'd have to bear in mind you've got a flight quite early the next day. The other thing I didn't like about it is the fact that you would work with random people every single day. And I guess at a young age it's good, but you'd rarely fly with the same person. Every flight you'd meet somebody new and you just had to work with them, you just got on with it. I don't know, for me, that's the thing I didn't like about it, to be honest with you. I just felt like every day you just don't know who you're working with, and I felt like you'd wake up and be like, I'm on a flight for 6 hours, who am I with? And you just would never know who you were with. You never know who your cabin manager was going to be until, you know, because you can see the names, but you don't actually know who they are most of the time. It was very rare that you'd fly with anyone that you did your training with or anything like that. Literally every flight, you're with 4 new people, a new captain, a new first officer, and you just had to get on with it. That was something I didn't like about it. The other downside is you would never really stay anywhere. You would literally fly there and fly back. On the odd occasion, if there was an issue with the flight or with the plane or a delay, you may stay somewhere on the odd occasion, like out of 6 months that might happen once. If you did stay somewhere though, they would put you in a really nice like 5-star hotel, and like everything would be included. You wouldn't have to pay for anything unless you wanted like extra alcohol or something like that. Yeah, that was the other downside. But overall, as a young single person, I think it is a really, really good career opportunity. You do get to go to places. Like, I can tell you a load of different airports I've been to, not necessarily got off of the airplane, but you do go to loads of different places. You get to meet loads of new people on the aircraft as well. There tends to be a lot of celebrities that fly into Luton, so a lot of those would be on your plane as well. Yeah, I'm just thinking, what else? What else could I tell you about it? You do have somebody from MI5 come in and do a training session with you. That's all I can say, because I can't really remember what they said. Obviously it's on like secret stuff, but that's as much as I could tell you. It was basically some of the stuff, some of the security measures that happen at the airport and what you should do and things like that. But yeah, that's it, to be honest. That is a mini story of what I liked and disliked about working at the airport for Easyjet, and that is it. Please don't forget to like, subscribe and share, and I'll be doing more story times and more hauls, so I'll see you in the next video.